Hi everyone. This webinar will start in about 5 minutes time. Thank you for waiting. But yeah, the webinar will start at around 2 p.m. GMT. Hi everyone. I'm just going to start in a couple minutes. This webinar will be recorded and it won't be overly long, so you will have time to watch it back and maybe catch up on some slides if you want to look at them for some more time later on. Okay. So hello everyone, and thank you for joining this session in the Career Navigator series with the Institute of Analytics. Today's webinar, as you can see, is called From Tools to Skills and Competencies, Speak the Language of Employers. And my aim today is to help you move beyond simply listing tools as your proofs of skills and towards presenting yourself in a way that employers actually think and make decisions. You want to be presenting yourself in line with how employers want you to be. And this is a big hurdle that a lot of graduates go through. A lot of students need to understand the difference between knowing and showing and how to sell yourself well. And academics really need to consider how to transform their programs so that they meet and they are in line with the kind of KPIs and like performance indicators and expectations that employers have of candidates applying for their first job within data analytics or data science. I feel like right now, especially in the UK and in the West, there's a big gap in an understanding of the skills that you need to teach students, but also the competencies that they need to be able to show and take away after they graduate. And making sure your program is built in the best way, that they have ample time to practice these different competencies and really hone them and grow them and have something that is sellable is really important. So we should have a mixed audience today, and a mixed audience generally watching the recording of this webinar in general. We'll have student and graduate members who are preparing for the next stage of their careers, and we'll also have academics and program leaders who are thinking about how to future-proof their business analytics or data science or data analytics programs. This webinar is going to be speaking to both groups throughout, and every slide will be relevant to both groups. Some slides may be more relevant to academics, some others may be more relevant to students, but I will signpost clearly when a point is especially relevant to one group or the other. By the end of this session, you should have a clearer language for describing what you can do and how it aligns with what organizations are looking for as we move towards 2026. So to set the scene, the Institute of Analytics sits at the intersection of education, professional development and industry. We spend a lot of time listening to members, listening to graduates and students and employers, and working with universities, supporting individuals at different stages of their analytics careers. Across these conversations we have and this listening that we do, a theme is really appearing, and that is that there is a gap between how students and academics talk about learning and how employers talk about roles, performance, and value in general. Universities quite rightly talk about modules, topics, and tools, whereas employers more so talk about impact, outcomes, and competencies. So as the title of the webinar suggests, we're going to be learning how to move from tools to competencies to speak the language of employers. This webinar is designed to act as a translator between the academic world and the employment world. For students and graduates, the focus is on how you present your skills and the experiences that how to present your skills and experiences so that employers can recognize your potential. And for academics, the focus is on how program design and assessment can make that potential visible and credible in the first place. So there's a few reasons why this topic is urgent right now. The first is the pace of change in tools. Over the last few years, we have seen an explosion of new platforms, especially with generative AI and generative AI integration into industry. Tools that seemed essential 5 years ago are already somewhat fading or becoming automated and integrated into our daily lives, whilst new ones are emerging at a rapid pace. This is probably one of the prime times in the 21st century for emerging tech within data science. If you define yourself only by tools, your professional story becomes very fragile and very, very tied to very accelerated continuous learning and the movement of the industries. At the same time, employers repeatedly tell us that hiring decisions do not come down to a specific named tool. They hire people who can understand a problem, work with data at realistic conditions, and help an organization make better decisions. Tools are part of that story, of course. It's how they are a means to a goal, they are a means to an end in the workplace, but they are not the whole story whatsoever. We also hear from employers that there's often a mismatch between CVs that list many tools and the depth of actual practical competency that they see in interviews and in jobs. This does not mean that students are not learning enough. It usually means that they have not been shown how to frame and evidence what they already know in a way that aligns with employer expectations. And this is one of the things that we will unpack today. So let me briefly outline where we're heading with this session. This session shouldn't be too long. It should be maybe around 45 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, depending on how fast I get through this. But first, we will quickly clarify the difference between tools, skills, and competencies. It's something that it is really important that you know the difference between. And this gives us a shared vocabulary that works across students, academics, and employers. Secondly, we will look at what employers are prioritizing as we move towards 2026. I will talk about the patterns that appear across analytics, business, and data science roles, rather than a single job title. Then we will focus on how students can present their abilities in CVs, portfolios, and interviews in a way that stands out. And fourthly, we will then look at what this means for academics who are shaping their programs and modules, and we will consider how learning outcomes and assessments can signal competencies employers actually care about. And then finally, we will close briefly on the concrete actions that you can immediately take after this session, and there will be time for questions and discussion if need be. So let's think about tools, competencies, and skills, and the hierarchy between them. When we talk to our employers, a helpful way to structure the conversation is as a simple hierarchy, and this is tools, skills, and competencies. And when I say talk to employers, I mean when we sell ourselves to employers or sell our capabilities in, say, a job interview. At the base level are tools. These are the languages, platforms, and technologies that we all know well. These can include Python, R, SQL, Excel, Power BI, Tableau, and various cloud platforms. They are essential, but they are also interchangeable. New tools will appear, old tools will depreciate, interfaces will change, and organizations will eventually migrate from one tech stack to another. Above tools sit skills, and skills are what you can actually do with the tools. You may be able to clean and join messy datasets, you may be able to design a dashboard in Power BI that answers a specific question, or build a predictive model, or run A/B testing. These are all skills that you can do utilizing the tools that you are competent in. Skills are a lot more stable than tools because the underlying tasks remain similar even when technologies shift and even when organizations migrate from one set of tools to another. You're very likely going to be able to do a database cleaning in a new, maybe SQL-based software, SQL-based organization after previously having done it exclusively in Python and in Pandas, because the skill sets are very similar. And at the very top of this hierarchy sits competencies. And a competency is the consistent, reliable application of skills, knowledge, and behaviors in a real context. For example, the ability to lead an end-to-end analytics project, from framing the problem to delivering insight that changes a decision. That is a competency. And competencies are really what employers are hiring for ultimately, because they travel with you from one role in an industry to another, and they are the key flags of success in your personal career journey. And you should be aiming to grow and build multiple competencies upon each other and proving them in your portfolio and your CV. And this is how you increase your employability in the long run. But it is not, unfortunately, as simple as that. So from the employer side, a CV or application can be scanned really fast, and it can be also scanned with software that helps for the automation of understanding a large amount of CVs. When they see a list of tools, they treat it as a starting signal, not a proof that you are actually able and competent within these tools. It tells them that you have been exposed to certain technologies, but it does not tell them how you behave when faced with them in a real business question. Such as conflicting priorities or maybe incomplete, messy databases. What they are really trying to infer is your capability to solve problems in their environment or in the environment that you will be working in. And they really want to know whether you can understand context, work with colleagues in different functions, and move from raw data to a recommendation that someone can act on using communication skills. For many graduates right now, the risk is that applications stop at the level of tools and module titles. And that can create the impression of breadth, so you've been exposed to a lot of tools and modules, but without depth, you haven't got a clear competency in any of these tools. The goal of this webinar is to help you push one level deeper, as per se, so that an employer can clearly see the types of problems you are ready to take on and the kind of impact you can help to create. So looking ahead to 2026, there are some clear themes that come up again and again when we speak to employers across sectors. And these are things that employers are wishing for. It is the employer wish list for candidates to have. The first is end-to-end problem solving, and this is because organizations want people who can move from an initial, sometimes vague question through data work and analysis and create a concrete recommendation and follow-up. This is not just a technical ability. If anything, it is far from just a technical ability. It's about structure, judgment, and ownership, as well as self-evaluation and curiosity. This is probably the main thing that if organizations were to be asked, it's what they would want. End-to-end problem solving, someone who can be accountable for their own actions and take a whole project on to their plate at once. The second thing that employers are starting to ask for now is AI-aware practice. Employers do not expect every analyst to be a machine learning researcher or to have a super in-depth of deep machine learning. However, they do expect people to be comfortable working alongside AI tools and to understand their limitations and to use them responsibly. You should understand regulation around AI. You should understand data law, data usage laws such as GDPR, and when you can and definitely should not be using AI to complete a task. And the third, and this is somewhat similar, is the business and domain understanding. Even in very technical roles, you need to understand how your work connects to revenue, cost, risk, customer experience, and operations or policy. A technically correct analysis that does not connect to the reality of the organization is not enough. If you're coming from a business analytics background, you need to be able to take advantage of the strong industry and sector domain knowledges that you have and work in those sectors where you can translate data into the business needs and business objectives of that sector. Understanding the context that your organization is in, whether they're a startup or they're pre-launch or they're pre-IPO or they're scaling or they're a multinational organization. Each different organization at these different stages will have a different context of growth and data use, and you need to be able to translate data accordingly to that understanding of that context. And the fourth, this one really doesn't get talked about enough, but it is so important, especially in the application process, and this is communication. Data storytelling, clear visualization, and the ability to explain uncertainty are all highly valued, as well as confidence in your own skill set and being able to tell and talk about your work clearly and confidently. If you are confident in your work, it increases employer confidence in you, and communication is one of the best ways to show confidence. And finally, collaboration and professionalism is kind of underpin everything. They're kind of what is expected of you in the workplace, but it is really important that you have skills in collaboration. You can work in a big team of diverse personalities, and you have a level of professionalism and accountability so that you work at a level that employers are expecting. Employers want people who can work in multidisciplinary teams, manage expectations properly, and navigate ambiguity in a constructive way. So for students and early career professionals, it is helpful to think about your development in terms of 3 clusters of competencies. And we'll run through what these clusters are now. The first cluster is the technical and analytical cluster. And this should cover your ability to acquire, clean, transform, and analyze data using the appropriate tools. With Institute of Analytics membership, you get access to DataCamp, DataQuest, and our proprietary resources, which are all great to helping you build on this first technical cluster. It includes your understanding of analytical methods, your ability to choose suitable techniques, and your awareness of where automated and AI-driven tools are helpful and when they are not. We have so many resources on learning these tools and getting better and more hands-on and practical with analytics tools. IOA is your place to go if you are looking to improve on this cluster. The second cluster is business and applied, and this is your ability to translate a business or organizational question into an analytical end-to-end plan. It includes defining what success looks like, selecting the appropriate metrics, and understanding constraints such as time, data quality, and stakeholder needs. This is really putting the business into business analytics, is where your understanding of context and domain knowledge and organizational needs matters the most. And the third cluster, and this cluster is a bit less intuitive, but it's the professional and reflective cluster. This includes communicating clearly with different audiences and reading the room and personalities and knowing how to leverage different personalities against each other, and managing your time and workload, and reflecting on your own practice, maybe explaining trade-offs between the different strategies that you could have used, so that you can continue to improve and show that you are aware of where you have made mistakes. This also covers your ability to pick up new tools and your ways of working over time. When you think about your CV or your IOA portfolio or your learning experiences, it's useful to ask which of these clusters you are already strong in and where you would like to build more evidence. If you're an academic, you want to structure your program so you're building these 3 clusters all at once for your students. And a lot of the time, many programs don't touch on the third cluster at all. You need to give students the chance to be reflective of their own work and of their peers' works, and how to reinforce and build on their weaknesses. Self-awareness is something that really is not taught and capitalized on enough at a student level. But understanding your own weaknesses and how to create a balanced portfolio is really important, and it's so important that students become aware of this as soon as possible in their development journey, so they have as much time as possible to become a balanced candidate and then start building on their strengths to become a niche professional in a certain field. So for academics and program leads, there is an important translation to consider. Module descriptors and learning outcomes often describe tools and topics. For example, they may state that the students will be introduced to a certain algorithm or use a particular software package to complete assignments. And this level of detail is fine. It is good to indicate what tools students will be learning, especially if perhaps your modules or your course omit certain tools that may be seen as standard elsewhere, such as your program may not teach R or Python. It's best to put that in your descriptions. However, employers do not talk in these tool-specific niche terms. They are interested in whether a graduate can, not whether a graduate has learnt. They don't simply care about recall, they care about the practical application of these tools in business settings. For example, work with imperfect data to answer a real business question, or whether students can collaborate with stakeholders to deliver a useful dashboard and communicate the insights from that dashboard clearly and in a way that is operational. At the IOA, we've just run a student sprint, student competitions, and we do these twice a year. And in this past one, we gave students a completely unsorted database with loads of errors, syntax errors, and data cleaning needed, and a business question, and they provided dashboards and presentations and visualizations at a really high level that will be really useful for them to prove to employers that they have the data skills they need and the communication skills that they need to work at a high level. This is one way that the Institute of Analytics provides courses, feedback, and student interactions to their members that can really help improving how courses meet employer KPIs in the future. This does not mean that we should remove technical learning outcomes. They're still really important to have, but it means that we should be able to express them in a way that describes the competency being built. So we want to express our learning outcomes instead of only stating that a student will use a specific tool. We can describe how they will apply it in scenarios that resemble real work, including constraints and trade-offs. When programs make this shift towards learning outcomes with competency, not simply tools, it becomes much easier for students to describe their abilities in language that employers will immediately recognize. For students and graduates, the practical challenge is how to talk about your experience. Many CVs start with a list of tools or a long list of modules studied. That information isn't wrong as per se, but it does not on its own show what you can actually do, and employers have no level of proof as to whether you can recall what you've learned and use it in a business environment. A more effective approach is to describe experiences using a simple pattern: problem, action, and then impact, with some context within the impact. What was the situation or the question? What did you do? And how was the result changed in the business context in the short and long run? Has the result been picked up by other teams, and is it now an organizational wide change, for example? This pattern can be applied to coursework, personal projects, internships, part-time work, or volunteering. Every single thing that you do that has a problem, action, and impact can be translated into this way to show your competencies and add it to your CV in this format. For example, on your CV, instead of writing something like used Python or Power BI in a university project, you might write something such as analyzed membership data for a student society, identified patterns in event attendance, and produced a dashboard that helps the committee plan activities, leading to a higher turnout in key events. This second sentence sounds so much more professional and proves the impact of your skills using certain tools which build into a competency. Just stating the tools that you used and what you used it in without giving the impact and the context. And the impact on the context does not have to be quantitative, it can be qualitative, as this last example was. Really boosts how well you sell yourself and employer confidence in you. This kind of statement still allows you to mention the tools that you used, but they're anchored in a story about value and your value to your organization. This is truly the language that employers are really listening for. So on this slide, we will focus on how to present your skills across 3 key places: your CV, your IOA portfolio, and your LinkedIn profile. This won't be too in-depth, but there should be small snippets of information for you to take home. For the CV, you should be always starting with a short profile that describes the kind of problems you are ready to work on, rather than listing tools. Then under each role or project, use the problem, action, impact and context pattern we just talked about. You want to group your tools under each skill areas such as data preparation, analysis, visualization, instead of a long alphabetical list. Remember the hierarchy of competency, skills and tools. You want your tools to be listed, categorized by skills, not the other way round. You have to remember that tools are at the bottom of the hierarchy. This makes things easier for hiring managers to connect tools to outcomes and to understand the skill sets that you have very clearly. You don't want your employers and the people looking at your profile to be inferring too much. You want to explain clearly what you can do and how you can do it. It's very often employers will not give you the benefit of the doubt if you don't clearly explain your competencies. For your IOA portfolio, quality matters more than quantity. Select a small number of projects that tell a clear end-to-end story and align them to the analyst competency framework whilst you fill in your portfolio. For every project you put onto your portfolio, briefly describe the context, the question you addressed, the approach you took, and the outcome or insight that you obtained at the end. You want to be using business language and avoid jargon where possible. Employers should be able to understand the value of the project even if they never look at the code because of the way you sell and explain it. On LinkedIn, finally, your headline and about section are prime space. You want to be using them to describe the type of decisions or challenges you want to support, such as improving operations, understanding customers, or informing policy. These are just examples. Feature portfolio items and feature your portfolio on your LinkedIn. Link it in your description. If you have an IOA portfolio, this is the best place to put it, as it creates another page of feedback that employers can look at for proof of your skills. Competition entries such as our student sprints, talks, certifications that demonstrate competencies such as the certifications you get when you complete our courses, all of these should be on your LinkedIn. It is a proof of activity and continuous learning. You don't want to just upload everything onto LinkedIn once and then never touch it again. Employers are also looking for activity and proof of passion about the area that you want to work in. When all three elements, your CV, your IOA portfolio, and your LinkedIn, tell a consistent story about your capabilities, you become much easier for employers to place and mentally see in their organization. A lot of the best evidence about your competencies is also already being created in the classroom. Assignments, labs, group projects, and dissertations all involve real analytical thinking and problem solving. The key is to shape that work so that it can be reused in a professional context. For students, that means taking a little extra time when you finish a piece of work to prepare a version that is understandable to someone outside of your course, perhaps. Write a short summary that explains the question, the data, and your approach and the key takeaway. If you can, include a note on what impact this could have if it was implemented in a real organization. This version then can go on your portfolio and be referenced in interviews, even if it was just coursework for a module. For academics, it's useful to design assessments that resemble the conditions graduates will encounter later, such as chasing KPIs and workplace conditions. This includes messy or incomplete data, ambiguous goals, and realistic time constraints. This is why I am a big fan of open book examinations with higher levels of complexity in the current modern day, even though there are some questions as to whether generative AI is a bit too helpful in an exam format. But if we build in a short reflective components where students can articulate what they would recommend to a real client and why, this helps them practice the language that employers expect to hear. In a more ideal scenario, there will be some form of live presentation or communication skills attached to some of these assessments so that we can really assess student value in the real world workforce. The shared goal of that academic work does double duty as per se. It assesses learning within the institution, and it also produces artifacts that students can use as credible evidence of workplace relevant competency. Too many assessments right now are purely about recall, and this is great in the short run for students to learn tools and learn theory, but in the long run, employers more so care about application in business relevant contexts. So if you want to think to yourself and think about whether the course that you offer offers too much based on theory and not enough based on application, this will bottleneck students later down the line hugely. So this slide kind of combines two perspectives, a program designed for academics and immediate actions for students. For programs, the guiding principle is to shift emphasis from content coverage to competency development. And if you're unsure what we mean by competencies, look at the IOA's Analyst Competency Framework on our website or our IOA portfolio, and you will see all of the different competencies that you can have as a data analyst from a beginner level all the way to a professional level. And this is something that is very good to map your program against. You want to make sure you're teaching all of maybe level 1 and level 2 so students are ready to be in the workplace as they graduate. This does not mean removing technical depth. It means for each module asking which competencies it builds and how those competencies are demonstrated. Regularly mapping modules against current job descriptions or our competency framework or role profiles helps to keep programs aligned with the current labour market. And if you are any course academic and you are building a course and need help with syllabuses, please feel free to accredit yourself with the IOA, and we will be very happy to help build your course in alignment with our analyst competency framework. For dissertations and capstone projects, and integrative models are particularly powerful. So modules that use multiple business contexts or maybe use real-world coding in a business sense, and dissertations that force candidates to use messy data and realistic scenarios. When students own an end-to-end analytics or data science projects, present to non-technical stakeholders, and address ethical, organizational, and AI-related considerations, they are essentially rehearsing the realities of working in a professional practice, and they are building something that's really sellable as an entry-level candidate into the data analytics workforce. These experiences are often what students talk about most enthusiastically in interviews, and it is also what employers want to hear about, the impact that you had and your end-to-end decision making. For students, there are also a few very practical next steps from this webinar. In the next week or the next few days, you can rewrite your CV profile and your LinkedIn About section to emphasize problems and impacts. The main thing I'd really recommend you do is start your IOA portfolio and start filling in your IOA portfolio and really understanding where you are in your professional development. It's very hard to move forward if you can't truly understand where you currently are and what gaps you may have in your past and any learning opportunities you've missed behind earlier before where you've reached where you are. You can select, say, 2 existing projects and rewrite their descriptions using the problem, action, impact, context structure. And over the coming term, you can deliberately seek out opportunities, whether through coursework, internships, or extracurricular activity that allow you to practice end-to-end problem solving and communication. Make sure to frame all of the coursework you do in a non-academic sense so that it could be shown on your portfolio if you wanted. And it's also key to keep passionate and keep searching for your different passions and where you really care about data analytics and the business context that you are studying. Passion is probably one of the best catalysts for continuous learning, and it's something that everyone should be reflective and searching for if they're not already passionate about something in data analytics and data science. Or you can simply be passionate about solving a problem or solving a specific thing that needs a solution. As we bring this session to the close, it's been a fairly fast session. It's looking to be about 40 minutes. It's worth highlighting how the Institute of Analytics can support both individuals and institutions in this shift from tools to competencies. For students and graduates, the Institute offers a professional home. This includes recognition, portfolios, as well as guidance on portfolios, our analytical framework, and an access to a community that spans sectors and regions. It also includes events such as webinars and in real life events, resources to help you stay current as roles and technologies evolve, as well as loads and loads of learning resources for anything that you could need within the data analytics and data science sector. For academics and institutions, we provide insight into employer expectations and emerging roles, and we support the alignment between programs and recognized competency frameworks. There are opportunities to collaborate on challenges, guest lectures, projects, and other activities that bring industry and education closer together. The core message today is simple. Tools are important, but they are not the end to the story. Employers in 2026 are beyond hiring for ability to deliver value. Employers in 2026 and beyond are hiring for the ability to deliver value, to solve problems end to end, and to communicate insight in a way that leads to better decisions. When students, academics, and professional bodies work together with that in mind, graduates are much better equipped to speak the language of employers. And it's that transformation, that future looking, that structuring of your academic programs in a sense that they help graduates get jobs. That's something that is really important and shows a very clear value proposition of your course to students and will lead to better post-graduation conversion rates into employment. Thank you for your time and attention, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them or hear reflections on how this connects to your own context. If you're watching this recording and you need, if you have any questions or any considerations that you want taken into account, please email me at rohanwbusiness@ioaglobal.com. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and evening, depending on where you are in the world.